back-to-back wins, a draw at Burnley. You're getting in danger of people getting optimistic about this football team.
Yeah, listen, I think the one thing you want to do for the fans is give them optimism. Do you know what I mean? They want to turn up to their team knowing that we're going to put everything on the line, we're going to do our best. And listen, we're not going to win every game. You know, that's only natural, but we should aspire to win every game. You know, we should aspire to go in there and play as well as we can, compete. And if we do get beat, we get beat because on that day we maybe didn't execute some things well enough. We maybe, I don't know, lost a header. That can happen. But it shouldn't be through lack of effort. It shouldn't be lack of organisation. Certainly organisation from my perspective. If that is the case, then I need to do better. If it's lack of effort, then the players need to do better. So it's a collective effort, you know, in terms of making sure we're competitive, make sure we try and win each game. So yeah, players should be, people should be excited. They should be wanting to come to the games. They should be having expectancy among the team, because I've got that among the team now. You know, I think they've got to go into each game knowing that, right, this is our minimum level. That's the minimum we accept.
It's easy to say you can keep this good run going by being consistent, but there's 11 players on the other team trying to stop you being consistent.
Of course.
How can you maximise the situation you're in? Because the dressing room must be full of confidence at the moment.
Yeah, I think one thing that we spoke about today, and to be honest, this isn't just for the players, this is for the club in general, in my view, is complacency. You know, when I mean complacency, what happens is because we've went and got a draw at Burnley, because we beat Sheffield United at the top of the league, because we went away to Preston, who arguably in the past have been difficult for Stoke to get results at, we can't expect you to turn up and beat Rotherham. That's lack of respect in my opinion, and also so far from reality that it's not even funny. You know, Rotherham are a dangerous team. You know, their new managers had 3 games. They've drawn one against Millwall, who are a hard team, as we know, because they beat us earlier in the season. They beat Huddersfield, who beat us earlier in the season, and they got beat by Blackburn. But in the Blackburn game, they had more than enough opportunities to score some goals. So they're a dangerous team. They've got some good players. We're going to have to make sure that we're organised, we're at our best, we're competitive, and we play well. If we don't do that, irrespective of whether it's Rotherham or anybody else, you're not going to do enough to win. So yeah, I'm certainly not counting my chickens, shall we say. All the focus is on doing all the bits we've done really well, doing it again, and if you do that, you've got a chance of winning.
You've talked about Rotherham and their good result against Huddersfield. The manager said that their form at home will keep them up rather than their away form. They haven't won away yet, and they'll probably sit in against Stoke. It will be a completely different challenge, won't it?
Yeah, listen, well, proof will be in the game. You know, we've sort of prepped and planned as we do for most games. We've got a couple of different sort of scenarios that if they do this, we'll do that, and we know how we're setting up. I think the most pleasing thing for me for the last game is obviously at home we played a 4 against Sheffield United, and then away at Preston we played a back 3, and we managed to play well in both games and win both games. So what it allows us to have is an element of flexibility in terms of we can adapt to both shapes. We don't need to change necessarily personnel, and we're equally as effective. So that's a good position to be in.
Do you think now, since you've come in and you've had time to train with the players and work on shape, etc., do you think you're now better equipped to deal with what they term a 3 games a week than you were when you first came in?
Definitely, yeah, and I think that's only going to improve as time goes by, because as I said before, and it hasn't really changed, you put your foundations generally in pre-season. So normally all these sort of layers that I would describe it as, in terms of what we do when certain teams do this, what we do when certain teams do that, how we would try and build against certain teams, what we'll fold into when we've got the ball, what we'd fold into when we haven't got the ball. Normally all the patterns, all the sort of terminologies, whatever you want to describe it, what shapes, that normally set in pre-season. So you work through that catalogue of work, and then you get the players to understand it, and then you need to make tweaks here and there along the way. The difficulty we've got is we're doing it from scratch. Not scratch, but we're building on a base now. Whereas at the start, I'm asking them to do things that they maybe haven't done so much before. But I think you can see now there's an element of consistency. There's an element of understanding, and I think, hopefully, most of the teams that I've had, that I've coached before, we play in a manner which your best players show that you're your best players. Hence the reason why I've sold a lot of players at most of the clubs that I've been at, because if you're good enough, hopefully the structure allows you to show how good you can be.
You'll know all the stats, but there seems to be an increased intensity now about the way the team are playing. You must be really pleased about that.
Yeah, I think that that was arguably my biggest challenge when I came in, I felt, in terms of changing that mentality, changing that mindset about how we get after the ball, making sure we're sort of triggering pressure, but more importantly going with an intensity to make sure we win the ball back. And what ends up happening is, like for instance against Watford for 65 minutes we did it really well, but then when the second goal goes in, that belief and that confidence, you've got nothing to fall back on because you've only been doing it for a short period of spell and time. So the challenge in me then making them believe in that, albeit we got damaged off the back of it, that's a big challenge, because a lot of players need reinforcement in terms of success. So when you do it and it works well, they go, oh, this works, let's do it again. So when it doesn't work so well, it's then being courageous enough to then go and make sure you do it better the next time. And the boys, to be fair to them, have been great in that respect.
In every game there's a few knocks. There looked like one or two players at the end were struggling, whether that was fatigue or knocks, only you know. Do you think you'll have to change the team this week, or will you be tempted to change it due to the different type of team you play?
Probably a little bit of both. I think that you look at, naturally nobody wants to give their slot up in the team, but we're coming up against a very different challenge. If you look at Preston and you look at Sheffield United, they're sort of pattern based teams, which means they've got set patterns that they build. So as long as we're set up to be able to stop that and prevent them from doing their patterns and then countering off the back of it and then having their own patterns. Whereas with Rotherham, a lot of the time there's not a lot to stop. Like a lot of the balls are direct, they're second balls, they're sort of second phases, they're set plays. So you need to be really competitive in the first phase in terms of winning headers, picking up second balls, and then you need to be able to play away from pressure really quickly. And if you can do that, then you've got an opportunity and a chance in the game. But if you don't do the basics well against Rotherham, you're going to find it a really difficult match.
The pitch size was changed. I think it's the smallest size pitch in the league now. Does that affect the way you set up for certain games, or do you just go with it? Because at Sunderland you had a much wider pitch, I think.
Yeah, I think depending on your team, obviously, I would probably describe us at the moment. You get different types of teams, and I would probably say that we're a high pressing team, but good in transition at the moment. I think that's probably some of our good strengths. I think sometimes when you probably want bigger spaces sometimes for that to work.
And you saw the over 3,000 fans on Saturday, which were behind the team. There seemed to be, for the first time in a long time, obviously you won't know this, a togetherness between the fans and the players. You've said it's important, but when Stoke have played at home this season, sometimes the wheels have fallen off. How important is it for the crowd to get behind the team?
You can't help but have that little bit of negativity in there, can you?
I know,
You just can't help yourself.
It's being a Stoke fan.
Yeah, but listen, let it go, honestly.
Okay.
Let's try the new outlook.
Right, the new improved Angela then.
Yeah.
The fans have been fantastic and been behind you. You'd like that to continue, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course, but as I said before, and I make no hiding the fact that it starts from us. Because I think it's easy to go in and say, if the fans back us, we play better. That's not how it works. We play well, the fans will respond. They pay the hard-earned money to come and follow us. They love the club, and what they want to see is they want to be able to relate to what's on the pitch. I'm hoping, and what I said when I walked in the door, that's my job to try and make sure I deliver that. I believe at the moment, I think the lads are doing exactly that, and I think the fans are responding off the back of it, which is great. We want to try and continue that. We want to kick it on to another level. We want to continue to do it. And hopefully that just creates that bond. So when we don't play well and we're maybe not at it, the fans, I wouldn't say give us a pass, but you're not going to win every game. That's really important that we say that. Do you know what I mean? But providing they see that we're doing everything we can, then I think they'll stay with you and they'll back you, and that's all we ask.
If you can continue this run and for the next couple of matches, it won't have sort of evaded your consciousness that Stoke could be right in there amongst it just before the break. Do you wish the break wasn't happening?
Dependent on how we perform and where the results are before we get there. Yeah, I think if we're doing really well, I don't want it to happen. That's me being honest. If we're not doing so well, we've maybe got a few injuries where we were maybe 3-4 weeks ago, I probably can't wait for the break to come. So yeah, it depends on the situation, doesn't it? But yeah, let's hope it's the first one.
And I hope so too. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alex, obviously, as you've already alluded to, you've got a new manager going into there, of course, and I've seen Exeter play many times under Matt Taylor, and he does at times when he was at Exeter play an expansive game, but he's gone in there and inherited Paul Warne's squad, who, as you already alluded to, they're quite one-dimensional under Paul Warne, and he hasn't had too much time, so don't you expect him to change too much from what Rotherham played under Paul Warne?
I think to do that in 3 games is extremely difficult. I think what you tend to find with a lot of clubs is if they've got an identity as a club in terms of how they want to play, they normally recruit the manager to then continue the same identity. Does that make any sense? Whereas some other clubs don't think about it that way. They just say, right, he's the best manager available, we'll take him, he can implement how he wants us to play. For what you're telling me, and for some of the parts that I've seen it when he was at Exeter, I don't think that obviously the current Rotherham manager and Paul are similar in terms of what their outlooks is in terms of how they would play, in my opinion, for what I've seen. But it will naturally take time for him to evolve how he's going to do that, because as you say, Paul's there a long time, and when you're anywhere a long time, they've got a lot of traits that will remain there for sort of the foreseeable future, shall we say, albeit you can't go in and turn everything upside down. You want to try and do it incrementally, so it's just small tweaks, and then eventually, it's like teaching anybody anything, isn't it? I mean, you go to school, you don't go to school and think, I could count to 10. But 6 months down the line, you can count to 10. You don't turn and go, that teacher's brilliant, taught me how to count to 10. You just think that you naturally managed how to do it. So it's incremental changes all the time. And the best way of teaching anybody anything is, come the end of it, they think it's them that knew it all. There's nothing to do with you or anybody else. That's the art of coaching and managing, isn't it? In terms of getting them to that point with the confidence and the belief and the knowledge of what they've got.
As you already alluded to, they do have players who can hurt you, and they hit the front fairly quickly. There's something about that, and they do have a striker who, on his day, can hurt defences, can't he?
Which striker?
Washington.
Yeah, Connor Watson, yeah. Connor's been about the league for a number of years. I think he was at Charlton before that as well. So he's a dangerous player. Ogbeni, really quick, stretches it, gets in behind. Tom Eves, good target. They've got the young lad at the moment, scored a couple of goals from recently from Ireland. So they've got good options. I mean, they're a dangerous team. I mean, I need to make that really clear. They're a dangerous team. And I think the best trait that Rotherham have got is they don't necessarily need to play well to win. And I think that's really important. You can't need to play well every single game to win games. You need to have an element of quality that can win you a match out of nothing, and they have got that.
And you've got that quality with this squad, haven't you, really? And you're beginning to find the feet and the adaptability of your players, and the link-up play, which you alluded to before in interviews, and the partnerships, they're starting to develop, Alex, aren't they?
They're starting to get better, yeah. I think we've got a good understanding of what we're trying to do now, but it will improve. The difficulty we've got is Rotherham have been a different challenge for what we've faced so far since I've been here. So Rotherham will be equally as difficult a game, but for different reasons. But yeah, that's how the game's going to be.